continue. We'll continue this, Kailash. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate.
Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate.
Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate.
Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate.
Iśāvāsya sarvam yatkinca jagatyam jagat.
Iśāvāsyam idam sarvam yatkinca jagatyam jagat.
Tena tyaktena bhunjitha magrudah kasya svidhanam.
Tena tyaktena bhunjitha magrudah kasya svidhanam.
Kurvanneveha karmani jijivishe chatagum samaha.
Kurvanneveह कर्माणि जिजीविषेषच्छतं समाः.
Evam tvayi nanyathetosthi na karma lipyate nare.
एवं त्वयि नान्यथेतोऽस्ति न कर्म लिप्यते नरे.
Asuryanamate loka andhena tamasa vrutaha.
असुर्यानामते लोका अन्धेन तमसावृता.
Tamste pret tamasa vrutaha. That is tamasa vrutaha.
I'll read.
Tamste
असुर्यानामते लोका अन्धेन तमसावृताः.
Tamste pretyabhigachanti yeke chatmahano janaha.
तांस्ते प्रेत्याभिगच्छन्ति ये के चात्महनो जनाः.
Anejadekam manaso javiyo nainadeva apnuvan purvamarshat.
अनेजदेकं मनसो जवीयो नैनद्देवा आप्नुवन् पूर्वमर्षत्.
Tadhavatonya tishtat tasminnapo matarishva dadhati.
तद्धावतोऽन्यान्त्येति तिष्ठत् तस्मिन् अपो मातरिष्वा दधाति.
Tadhavatonya tishtat. This goes like
तद्धावतोऽन्यान्त्येति तिष्ठत् तस्मिन् अपो मातरिष्वा दधाति.
Tadejati tannaijati taddure tadvantike.
तजेजति तदेजति तन्नैजति तद्दूरे तद्वन्तिके.
Tadantarasya sarvasya tadu sarvasyasya bahyatah.
तदन्तरस्य सर्वस्य तदु सर्वस्यास्य बाह्यतः.
We finished till 5. Now we'll look at the 6th one. Yastu sarvani bhutani.
यस्तु सर्वाणि भूतानि
Atmanyevanupashyati.
आत्मन्येवानुपश्यति.
Sarvabhuteshu chatmanam.
सर्वभूतेषु चात्मानं
Tato na vijugupsate.
ततो न विजुगुप्सते.
Satya, can you chant this once? Yastu sarvani bhutani.
यस्तु सर्वाणि भूतानि
Atmanyevanupashyati.
आत्मन्येवानुपश्यति.
Sarvabhuteshu chatmanam.
सर्वभूतेषु चात्मानं
Tato na vijugupsate.
ततो न विजुगुप्सते.
Chandramama urdhara solrela. Yastu sarvani bhutani.
यत् सर्वाणि भूतानि
Yastu sarvani bhutani.
यस्तु सर्वाणि भूतानि
Atmanyevanupashyati.
आत्मन्येवानुपश्यति.
Sarvabhuteshu chatmanam.
सर्वभूतेषु चात्मानं
tato na vijugupsate.
ततो न विजुगुप्सते.
So this mantra is, so now let's just look at the word meaning of this mantra. Yastu yahatu, one who, sarvani bhutani, in all beings, sees in the self. Atmanyeva anupashyati. Atmani eva anupashyati. Anupashyati is sees it as a reflection. Anupashyati is to see. Anupashyati is to anu is used as a prefix to indicate if you're following or if it is a reflection. At that time you use the prefix anu. Anupashyati means to see it again, or see it in a reflected form, or see it in a repeated way. So where does he see it? He sees it himself, in himself. The one who sees all the in all the beings, he sees it in himself. Atmani eva anupashyati. And then sarva bhuteshu chatmanam tatona vijugupsate. Sarva bhuteshu chatmanam. In all the beings, he sees the same self. So what the mantra says is, the one who sees this self, this Atma, this Isha, in all beings. Atmani eva anupashyati. This Atma alone that he sees in all the beings, and he sees all the beings in himself, in the self alone. For such a person, tataha na vijugupsate. Vijugupsate does not hate anything. Vijugupsate, the word means to hate, to reject, or to repel. It comes in the dvandva, which is your raga dvesha. He doesn't have dvesha towards anything. Okay. So now how do you perceive this? How do you perceive this particular mantra? Now we've always been told that we should see everyone, you should treat another the way you treat yourself. Correct? This is a common saying. Even in Christian philosophies, Christ has said it this way. And you will see Christ has mentioned that treat thy neighbor as thyself. This is one of the sayings that we would have. I studied in a convent, so some of these things I've seen written there. Treat thy neighbor as thyself. Which means what is happening there is, when you're wanting to be treated fairly in this world, then you should treat the other person also fairly. When you wanted to be treated well, then you should treat the other person well. When you want to be treated with respect, you should treat the other person with respect. So what it means is, the way you treat the world, it will reciprocate to you in a similar way. Now that's because of the law of karma, or the law of action reaction, or whatever that is. This is what we have seen. Only when you give respect to somebody can you expect respect back in an interaction. Because there are cases when you give respect also, you don't get back respect. That is fine. That's a different situation. But it's very unlikely that you don't give respect to somebody, yet they give you respect. It's unlikely. The only reason somebody would give you respect in that case, even if you don't respect, is either you're the boss, which means you're giving money, or you're in a position of power. So if you're in a position of power or in a position of wealth, then even if you, for the short term, I'm saying, even if the short term or the short period of time, it may appear as though you can, somebody will bear your ill treat, somebody will bear your disrespect, because you are for a brief period in a position of power and wealth. But that will not last long, right? So what we've seen in general, and then when you're in a position of power and wealth, we've always seen there are revolutions that happen, people revolt back. கொஞ்ச நாள் பொறுத்துக்க முடியும். For a period of time, they will bear it. Even for a couple of generations, they will bear it. We've seen such stories. People bear all that ill treatment for a couple of generations, but then after that, they will revolt. There'll be a upsurge. People will throw you out, and things like that will happen. We've seen this in history. But in general, and we are normal civilized human beings, we don't have to get to that level of violent engagement, right? So for us, even at our normal level of engagement, we know that only if I treat somebody with care, respect, attention, then I will get a similar treatment. In fact, in the Native American tradition, there is a stick that is given. There is a staff. So usually the Native American culture is, whenever there is a council, the wise men sit in the council and there are people who will come. நம்ம பஞ்சாயத்து மாதிரி நடக்கும். It'll be a formation like our panchayat, where there'll be the wise men of the society, of that tribe, and then the rest of the tribe will be sitting there, and they'll meet to discuss issues of the community or whatever they need to address or whatever, right? There is something that is called a staff, like a stick or something. It's usually passed around, and that stick is passed around, and only the person who's holding the stick will be allowed to speak. And there is and their philosophy there is, first seek to understand, then to be understood. Which means first seek to understand, which means first learn to listen what the other person is saying, and then expect to be understood. What we always typically do is, I want others to understand me. This becomes a priority. I always want the other person to understand me. He doesn't understand me, she doesn't understand me, they don't understand me. I am doing this and the other, I'm saying this and the other, they don't understand me. We are typically in that zone where we want to be understood always. Now, do we evaluate to see how much do we understand what those people are going through, what that person is going through, what that person is wanting to share, say? So there's a very beautiful tradition they have, where it says, seek to understand and then to be understood. So the person holding the stick is the person only who will be able to speak. நம்ம ஊர் பஞ்சாயத்துல கொடுத்தா அந்த குச்சியாலே மண்டையில 2 போடு போட்டு நான் தாண்டா பேசுவேன், I'll be the one to speak out actually. That's how we go over it. No, but this discipline is a self-discipline that we need to create for ourselves, which means we should always allow for us. That is where you build compassion. How does compassion get built? Is when you offer yourself a little bit of your time, your energy, your attention to somebody else. It could be someone at your home or somebody outside. You offer a little bit of your time, your attention, your energy to that person, and you try to hear, try to listen to what they have got to say. And then we talk about ourselves. See, typically, again, when we talk with people over the phones, And you can notice this behavior within yourself. When you pick up the phone and you start ranting about yourself, before you listen, how are you feeling, what are you doing, instead of asking these questions, you start ranting about your situation, your problems, then you know that where you are. When you pick up the phone and we talk to somebody, do we give them an opportunity? Everybody has their problems. Everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants to be heard. Everybody's got a story to tell. So are we in a position to patiently first, you may have a lot of things to rant, but then have you a moment to first listen what's happening with them, hear them out, listen to them out, and then you probably share what you've got to share. This develops a certain level of compassion within you. It develops a certain level of also acknowledging the fact that as much as I am suffering and going through, that person is also suffering and going through problems. I am not the only one having problems. I am not the only one, a lot of issues on hand. The other person is also having that. In whatever condition you are, we should practice this. Whatever situation we are, we should practice this. What happens to us is we think the situation or the condition we are in is the worst condition that is ever possible. Nobody else on this planet has ever been in this situation. Mine is the worst situation. Hence, you will not understand what I am going through. So you should listen to me. This is where we come from. Why we are talking about this? This shloka says, what is the shloka saying? Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyeva anupashyati. Which means once you are able to recognize that this Isha or the self, it is operating through everybody. This is what I tell people. You are unique in your blessings, but you're absolutely common in your sufferings. If we recognize this, if we repeat this to ourselves, that I am exactly similar to the other person in my suffering, but I'm unique in my blessings, which means I have grace, I have God's grace, Guru's grace, teacher's grace, whatever grace I get, I've got a comfortable life, I've got comfortable living, I've got people around me. All of this, you should feel that you're uniquely blessed. But in your suffering, you should always think that you're common, you're similar to the other. Your suffering is no greater. If you do that slowly, what develops is this. This is the vision. What Iśāvāsya Upanishad talks about is the way in which an Atmajnani, a Brahmajnani sees the world. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyeva anupashyati sarvabhuteshu chatmanam sarvabhuteshu chatmanam. So he sees the self in all beings. The same self that is there in me is in all beings. At the same time, all of them are in here. All the beings, all the creation, all of the world is in me. So such a person, tataha, thereafter, once you have this kind of vision, sarvabhutani chatmani eva anupashyati sarvabhuteshu cha atmanam. In such a transaction, when I perceive the whole, my vision becomes such. The way I perceive the whole of creation, I perceive it in a way where I see creation as a reflection of what is over here. This Isha, I see it as a reflection. And whatever is out there is essentially the same as this. Right? Yastu sarvani bhutani atmani eva anupashyati sarvabhuteshu chatmanam. So if this transaction, so just visualize this transaction, right? When you are when your perception has now become, like I said, this is the perception of an Atmagyani. Now we can say that I am not an Atmagyani, I am not a Sarvagya, I am not a Brahmagyani, I am not a realized person. That's all right. See, the problem with the Upanishad is it gives you the highest perception, not in a way to disappoint you, to say you are not there. It is in a way to say that there is this possibility that is there which you can attain. It is pointing you to a possibility. That is why Shruti Mata, it is like a mother, it is constantly feeding you this idea, this constant idea that there is this possibility. You can perceive the world in this way, but we can start it in smaller ways. We start it in smaller ways in our daily transactions, in our daily engagements. We start it in smaller ways. That doesn't mean that you let somebody trample over you. I am not saying that adhikaga you become a doormat and let people walk over you, like the example that we spoke about, right? The mahut, the mad elephant running and the mahut saying run away, but the Sishya still going there and getting trampled over. The Guru says, if you see Brahman in the elephant, also see Brahman in the mahut. He is telling you move away. So there is an element of common sense that needs to be brought in. Right? Without common sense, we cannot say I am a spiritual being and you become or a spiritual person and you become a doormat. That's not the point. But when your vision becomes like this, what rises there is compassion. Naturally, will you go and harm your own body? Will you go and harm your own body under any circumstance? First thing you'll preserve and protect is your own body. Correct? If somebody is bringing a pin or an injection or pin to prick you, this is your hand here and there is a hand of some other person. The pin is coming to prick you. You'll instantly try to protect it, right? I say, no, don't, it'll pain me, it'll pay, whatever. So it'll harm me, it'll pain me. But if the pin then moves besides you and goes to another person's hand, you'll say, oh, no problem, go ahead. Because your boundary ends here. Your boundary ends here. Anything beyond this, you really don't, it doesn't really matter to you. It doesn't impact you. But if the other hand there is your child's hand, then you say, yo, wali kyon? Don't do that. Wali kyon? Or if it's your husband's, wife's, boyfriend, girlfriend's hand, yo. Completely a stranger's hand, you may feel a little bit, but you won't take the effort to do anything about it. Now, why this comes with association? With this comes with recognizing that this other person here is associated. There is an association here. Now, the Upanishad is saying, expand this association. There are only two ways in the path of realization. One is either you make your identity zero, which means you completely absolve yourself of your identity, or you make your identity universal. Either you go Shunya or you go Purna. Only two ways. And it is good because there are some people who are introverts. They may want to go into the path of dissolving. There are some people who are extroverts. They may want to go in the path of expanding. So you either absolve or you either withdraw into a point where you don't have a personal identity of yourself. There is one story I've read somewhere. There's this yogi who did tapas so much he did so much tapasya that he eventually became, his body became so supple, his bones, everything became so supple that they had to carry him in a bag, the disciples. சொல்லும் தெரியுமா, முதுகு எலும்பு கூட இல்லையே, you don't have a spine. Which means what? When you're saying, don't you have a spine, stand up for yourself, which means you're establishing your identity, right? Now this yogi, through his tapas, he wanted to dissolve his identity. And when he dissolved his identity, physically his spine, his bones, everything became so supple, so malleable that he couldn't get up and walk. He became like almost like a mass of flesh, and they had to carry him. So disciples would carry this guru. So if we have that much capacity or ability to dissolve our identity, or if we don't, then expand. We live in a society today, right? We live in a society which human beings are social beings. We do not have an option, or any of us think we have an option to go into isolation, into the Himalayas, or into the hills of Tiruvannamalai, or some of those places where there are siddhas who live incognito, unknown by anybody. If we have the ability, we would have done it. Correct? Right now, if we go, maybe most of us are at an age, if we go now, we'll die of mosquito bites. It requires a different kind of training and resolve to be in such harsh conditions. But yet there are people who take up, even at the age of 35, 40, 45, they take up to such resolutions and do it. That is divine grace, and the level of vairagya that they carry, determination that they have, is intense. They're handful of people. But by and large, most of us we would want society around us. We need society. We need the society to be able to interact, because there is transaction. We need society for our existence. Even though we feel that என்ன தனியா விடுப்பா, நிம்மதியா இருக்கேன் அப்படின்னா, நாளைக்கு பால்காரன் வரலனா, if the milkman doesn't come tomorrow, leave me alone, I'll be just by myself, I don't need anything you'll say. But the next day the milkman doesn't come, your coffee isn't there, you're completely gone. நிறைய பேருக்கு டாய்லெட்டே வராது காஃபி சாப்பிடலன்னா. So you're dependent on the palkaran. He's so intimately essential to your existence. So what I'm trying to say is this recognition of how we are intimately related to the environment, to the people, to the animals, to the environment, all of that, to the nature that we are existing in. That is what it means. When you see yourself in everything, means you see that how it is so much a part of what you are. A very simple example. What I breathe out is what the trees are breathing in. What the trees are breathing out, I am breathing in. The oxygen is generated from there. So my breathing in depends on the environment around me, the trees around me. So there's this intimate relation that is there. We have to, and this intimate relation comes, you will come to understand when we spend some time in nature, which is why we go for yatras, right? In yatras, when you go, you are exposed yourself to nature in a very vulnerable way. How much ever you take care of yourself, you're still vulnerable. You go out in the nature, you are in the mountains and the hills, and you're around the oceans and all of that. You make yourself vulnerable because there you recognize this connection between you and nature. You recognize that you can't stand as an individual anywhere. How much ever you claim you have fame to claim, how much ever great you are, you think, even spiritually, if you think you have attained to a certain state, you should know that we cannot exist without the social situation or the environmental situation that is around us, right? So if I need this society, if I need the social situation around me, then how much more it is important for me to recognize that as much as I am part of that, they are part of this. We are together part of this whole system. The moment we develop that understanding and our interactions with people come to that level of compassion and understanding, then we've understood this mantra, right? Yahatu sarvani bhutani atmani eva anupashyati. When I see that the self that I am, this consciousness, when we say this consciousness is all pervasive, when we say Iśāvāsya idam sarvam in the first mantra, it already means that this Isha is all pervading. So the first mantra itself tells you Iśāvāsyam idam sarvam. The moment you are recognizing that this Isha is everywhere, it means it is also in your neighbor. It is also in the guy, the rickshaw wala, the auto guy. It is also in the guy who's traveling in the bus and spitting. It is also in your family. It is also in your husband, wife, child, whatever, mother, father. So think if this Isha is the same that is operating through this is also in the jihadi. The same Isha. See, this is how we should look at expanding the jihadi who's tying a bomb to himself and doing stuff. This Isha is also operating through him. The same Isha is operating through my mother, through my father. It's the same. Now, when you develop a certain level of recognition that this is where it is, then of course what needs to be done will be done. I'm not saying we go and support just because Isha is operating through a terrorist. We are not going to support a terrorist. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying first interaction with somebody should be of compassion, and that is where it says tatona vijugupsate. Sarva bhuteshu chatmanam. Second line, sarva bhuteshu chatmanam tataha na vijugupsate. There is no hatred. Your interaction is always of a certain level of compassion. It's not of hatred. Because this distinction when we create, that is where the whole seed of hatred and the seed of hatred is there. The seed of you are different, I am different comes from that place where I create distinction. So when there is, see, even Vivekananda is a saint of the highest order, where he needed to be stern and where he needed to be absolutely, how do you say, absolutely ruthless in his approach. He has been that. Although he has this vision, yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyeva anupashyati. He has got that vision. He's in that state of perception. Yet he is, in some of his approaches, he's ruthless. It's not coming from a place of hatred or disrespect for the other. It's coming from a place of complete understanding that this needs to be in a certain way. Something has to happen in a certain way. And so you uphold your principles, you uphold your philosophies and your principles because you have this grand understanding. So that is one way how we bring this Iśāvāsya mantra to our daily living. Right? The jnani sees it this way. The jnani is able to see it this way. Can we start slowly bringing this teaching into our life? The first interaction with anybody should be of compassion. Na vijugupsate. Do not hate anybody. Because if you hate, if you say you're on the spiritual path and you nurture hatred, it is completely detrimental to what you're trying to do. It is like what Gurudev Paramahansa Yogananda will say. It is like filling a pail of milk from the cow. You take a lot of effort to do your spiritual sadhana. You're filling up a pail of milk. How painful it is to fill a pail of milk from the cow's udder. It's a lot of work. And then when you're getting up, you're kicking the pail of milk. And then you'll be back to ground zero. You have to start it all over again. So this is something that we need to recognize, how this teaching, we bring it within ourselves to see what the Upanishad is saying. Na vijugupsate, does not hate, means you develop over time, you develop a sense of compassion. How do you develop a sense of compassion? When you see yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyeva anupashyati sarva bhuteshu chatmanam. When you see I am, the self is in everything and all of them are on me. When I see that, then tataha na vijugupsate. There's no hatred. Every interaction will begin with a certain level of compassion. That, oh, they are also like me. Okay. One last point. The other interesting way to just look at it is a Vedanta Vichara, which is which takes you to Dakshinamurti's first shloka, Vishwam Darpana Drishyamana Nagari Tulyam Nijantargatam. Vishwam Darpana Drishyamana Nagari Tulyam Nijantargatam, which means whatever I perceive, the world is actually perceived as a reflection in me. Like how a large city, Nagari, is seen, a Nagari or a city is seen in the rear view mirror of when you're going in the car, when you're going, you see the whole city in the rear view mirror as a small image. Darpana Drishyam, in the mirror, Drishyam Ana Nagari, the Nagari you're able to, Drishyamana Nagari, Tulyam Nijantargatam, that in the same way, it appears, the whole creation appears in my inner space, Nija Antargatam, in my inner space. That's how it appears. So now, if you think of it this way, then you read the shloka again. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyeva anupashyati. Atmanyeva anupashyati. It appears as a reflection in me. Tulyam nija antargatam. Atmanyeva anupashyati. So the same thing, all this is here, is actually a reflection here. How? Because any experience that I have out the outside world is not outside. It is inside me. If I'm seeing something, is in my eyes. If I'm touching something, is on my skin. If I'm hearing something, it's in my ear. If I'm smelling something, it's in my nose. How do you know whether it is outside or inside? It is, your experience is always inside. Your experience of the world is always inside you. If somebody is coming and shouting at you, yelling at you, that yelling experience is happening inside of you. You're hearing it and the experience is happening inside of you. Suppose you're deaf and you're not looking at the person. He keeps yelling, you'll never hear it. You'll not know what's happening. So the whole experience is inside me. Now, this is a Vedanta Vichara. This is one of the prakriyas to contemplate on. So how I withdraw my senses and I see the whole world, Vishwam, the whole Vishwam is in me. Nija Antargatam, Vishwam Nija Antargatam. So when I perceive it that way, now this whole Vishwam is not the objects, not the wall, the plants, the trees, and it's also the people. It's also my wife. It's also my mother-in-law. It's also my dog. It's also those people I think I hate. It's also them. So tataha na vijugupsate. Hence, when we develop this kind of perception, we should connect all of this, right? The first was Iśāvāsya Idam Sarvam. If we claim that I have understood that and I have internalized it, if I have understood Iśāvāsya Idam Sarvam Yatkincha Jagatyam Jagat, if I have understood that, or if I want to understand that, or if you think that I've gotten, I'm trying to get that, I've gotten it, then when you come to this mantra, then this mantra is just an expression of the same. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyeva anupashyati sarva bhuteshu chatmanam tataha na vijugupsate. After that, does not hate, does not repel. And you develop a sense of compassion around everything and everybody. Okay, so we'll pause here today. We'll just chant this. When someone can follow me, we'll just chant this. Chandraji, follow pandrela. Or 3 times chant panidla.
பண்றேன்.
Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyevanupashyati.
यस्तु सर्वाणि भूतानि आत्मन्वेयानुपश्यति
Sarva bhuteshu chatmanam tato na vijugupsate.
सर्वभूतेषु चात्मानं ततो न विजुगुप्सते
Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyevanupashyati.
यस्तु सर्वाणि भूतानि आत्मन्येवानुपश्यति
Sarva bhuteshu chatmanam tato na vijugupsate.
सर्वभूतेषु चात्मानं ततो न विजुगुप्सते
Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyevanupashyati.
यस्तु सर्वाणि भूतानि आत्मन्येवानुपश्यति
Sarva bhuteshu chatmanam tato na vijugupsate.
सर्वभूतेषु चात्मानं ततो न विजुगुप्सते
Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnaat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Kayena vacha manasendriyerva buddhyatmana va prakrite svabhavat karomi yatyat sakalam parasmai narayanayeti samarpayami sadashivayeti samarpayami jagadambikayeti samarpayami sadgurunathayeti samarpayami. Hari Om Tat Sadgurubhyo Namah.